Hey friends, welcome back. Today we are making Enigma Parfum Cologne from Roja Parfums. Or at least this is a formula based on a GCMS analysis of Enigma Parfum Cologne. This is a formula that was floating around online. It's similar to a formula that I have that I generated from a GCMS analysis, but the fact that this is coming from elsewhere, not from me, I figured I would highlight this other one. Now, I'm familiar with this fragrance. I have heard that when this was released, there were some chemical reactions in the fragrance that made it smell a little bit like root beer or Dr. Pepper or something like that. I don't know if that's the one that I smelled. There certainly is a cola-like quality to it, which we'll go into in just a second. But I don't know if it was the good one or the bad one or what it is. Long story short, I know what this smells like, so I'm interested to see what this smells like. I don't know who perfumed it. Is it true that Roja Dove himself perfumes all of these hits? Is it possible? I don't know. I doubt it, but you know, that's how it's marketed, so we'll say that Roja Dove perfumed this. It was released in 2019, 6 years after the normal Enigma was released. That was released in 2013. But looking at the structure here, almost half of this is ISO-E Super. A lot of ISO-E Super. Then we've got some sweet notes like vanilla, coumarin, ethyl vanillin, and there is a lot of ionones. There are a lot of ionones. There's methyl ionone gamma, there's Iralia or N-methyl ionone, and then there's dihydroionone beta. So 24% of the concentrate is in ionones. So when you mix ionones and vanilla like materials, particularly benzoin, that for me triggers cola or Dr. Pepper or that kind of vibe. So I can see how you mix those, we might get a cola vibe. But looking forward to putting this together. We are going to start with the ISO-E Super. We're going to add the heavy stuff, the big stuff, and build from there. We're going to see how each piece of the puzzle affects the previous layer. So let's add our ISO-E Super. For this particular batch, I'm making just over 8 grams. This will finish at roughly a 15% concentration. So, for example, this ISO-E Super I'm using is neat. Some of the materials are at 1%. I have Hedione HC at 50%. Everything else is at 10%. But with the ratios of what goes in here, the end product will be about 15%. All right, we've got our ISO-E Super. Let's add our vanilla notes. We're going to start with vanillin. I see Heliotropin here classified under my sweet notes, but I think I need to move it. I don't know. What do you think? Do you classify Heliotropin as a sweet note, a vanillic note? Is it a fruity note because it's got that cherry vibe? Is it a floral note? Where do you put Heliotropin? It's kind of one of those that might straddle the line of the fragrance families. But now we're doing vanillin. Vanillin is handily in the sweet gourmand category. Lovely stuff. So I'm going to skip the Heliotropin. I'm going to put that in with the with my floral materials. Should I? The second guessing I have. Well, we don't have to cross that bridge now. Let's do our ethyl vanillin. It's almost equal parts vanillin and ethyl vanillin. All right, ethyl vanillin. Just a touch more ethyl vanillin than there is vanillin. You get that same sweet gourmand vibe, but it's a little creamier, milkier, sweeter, dare I say. little more like ice cream. Okay. Next up, coumarin. Just a splash of coumarin, just to brighten it up a little bit. Give us just a little bit of brightness in the sweet notes. Wonderful. This is a fresh batch of coumarin. I go through this stuff quite a bit, or at least a fresh dilution, I should say. Next up, bicyclonolactone. Now, I'm confused why this is in the formula. It smells a lot like coumarin, just a little more lactonic. It's just interesting that it's almost like you have a coumarin accord here rather than just plain old coumarin. We're nowhere near the IFRA limit. So, interesting. It's just interesting. Okay. You know, I think today we are going to go with, wow, look at this. We're almost a third of the way full here. And we've only done our ISOE Super and our vanillin. Let's give this a shake. I want to test this. I want to do a lot of testing today. I do enjoy getting my nose on as many stages in the process as possible. ISOE and vanillin, that's number 1. Let's dip. Okay. Wonderful. All right, let's continue with some of these more base-like notes. I'm going to save the patchouli. We're going to do a little mishmash here. These are still sweet notes. We've got benzoin. We're going to do Herculean D, which is really hard to smell. For my nose, very hard to smell. We're going to do our Bactinol, Evernil, the more smooth, sweet base notes before we get into the musks. So let's start with our Benzoin Siam resin. Almost 2% of the concentrate is in Benzoin Siam. Okay. Measure twice. Pipette once. Whew, yes. Love the chocolatey, vanilla, resinous vibe of benzoin. It is just delightful. Absolutely delightful. All right, let's do our splash of Herculean D. Actually, you should probably make a smaller dilution of this because there's almost not enough. It wasn't even a half drop that goes into here. I wonder if Herculean D was used in this scenario as a solvent. Can you use Herculean D as a solvent? I don't know. Do not know. Okay, let's do our Bactinol. Just a little bit of Bactinol. Yeah, just about a drop of Bactinol, the wonderful, strong, long-lasting sandalwood-like material. It's sweet, it's ambery, it's sandalwood, it's golden, it's rich, it's lovely. Next up, Veramos or Evernil. Veramos, this one, IFF product, otherwise known as methyl atrarate, one of the core molecules inside of oak moss. And this is just, one drop. One drop is enough. Okay. Okay, you know what? Forget it. We're going to add our patchouli. There's not much. There's not much. And let's see if we can pick it out when we're smelling this at the end. We'll add our patchouli now. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. Okay. Let me cap it. That's strong patchouli. Okay. Okay, we're off to a good start here. Let's dip this. Be careful. Sometimes I will spill in the middle of a dip. And here we had our benzoin, Veramos, Bactinol, Patchouli, Herculan D. That was number 2. Okay. Let's add our musks. And I've got Pyrrolone in here. I'm thinking Pyrrolone I need to save to the end. It lasts a very long time, but just the effect that it has on the formula, it's not considered like a sweet base musk. You know, it doesn't serve the same function. So let's keep those separate. Let's do our musks. Now, these include 2 musks that I've been reviewing and testing recently that I very much like, Exaltone and Exaltenone. They're wonderful. They can be hard to smell. I've learned that if I smell one, I can't go right to the other because I can't smell the other. And then if I come back a half hour later and I smell this one, it smells a touch different, but almost indistinguishable to my nose. And then I can't go back to this one and smell this. I can only smell one at a time. So it's like I got to give 5 minutes, 10 minutes in between smelling these. But they're wonderful. They're slightly animalic. They're slightly powdery. They're musky. They're a little bit warm. They're a little greasy almost. And supposedly, they have a meaningful effect on your formula. So let's start with our Exaltone. And there is just a splash of Exaltone. That is enough. Yeah, that is enough. Okay. Exaltone, sometimes called Musk 15, or cyclopentadecanone. Cyclopentadecanone. Okay, next up, Exaltenone. These share a similar facet, a similar effect as Exaltolide, but Exaltolide has just a touch more metallic nature. It's stronger, it's more forward, and it's a touch more warm and ambery, Exaltolide, but it still has the powderiness, the animalic aspect. And if I'm not mistaken, Exaltenone and Exaltone are both relatively expensive materials. Some of the more expensive formulas that I have in here are simply expensive because they're high in Exaltenone, Ambroxanide, stuff like that. Okay. We have a couple small amounts, which is interesting. Galaxolide. 0.02% of the concentrate is in galaxolide. Which is interesting because galaxolide is a heavy hitter in fragrances. It's typically used in large amounts in fragrances. For this batch, I almost need to make a 1% dilution. But instead, I'm using the 10% dilution and just using a little bit, a very teensy weensy amount. Next up, Velvione or Ambrettone. Velvione is a Givaudan musk. I have not reviewed this. I'm going through the musk reviews right now, but this I've yet to get to. But we're going to add it. Though I can't comment on what it smells like. Last up, Ambrettolide. I'm learning there's a lot of different Ambrettolides. This one's made by Givaudan. I just had a shipment come in. I got the Ambrettolide from IFF. Don't know how different they smell. I got an Ambrettolide HC Supreme that's manufactured by ACS. There's Scentolide, which is a different version. Remember that, well, first of all, Ambrettolide is is also known, or perhaps more appropriately called, isoambrettolide. And just like many of the molecules that we use in perfumery, there are stereoisomers. There are isomers. There's different versions of the molecule, depending on which way the molecule is facing or which way it's flipped. And those isomers smell sometimes very different, sometimes not so different. But professional perfumers will choose their isomers very carefully. Ambrettolide versus Ambrettolide HC. Hedione versus Hedione HC. Okay. So we can dip, and we are easily just going to put musk here. Musk. 3. Okay. Wonderful. We are going to do, should we do Hedione? Yeah. We're going to mix Hedione in with our ambers. We're going to do our ambers right now. There's only a splash of Hedione in this, which is interesting. Now it's Hedione HC, so it's stronger than normal Hedione, but there's not much. Only about 3.5% of the concentrate is in Hedione HC. Now this should have an effect. It's not to say that this won't do something in the formula. But considering how Hedione these days is pretty much used like a solvent rather than an ingredient, it's just used so heavily. It's just interesting that there's not much in here. We have 3 other ambers. Ambroxin, or Ambrox Super. This is a molecule I can't smell at a 10% concentrate, at a 10% dilution. I have to move it to about 1%, or I can smell it at 1%, or I can barely smell it at 10. And did you know, if you're making a dilution of ambroxin, don't make a 20% dilution in ethanol. Won't work. Not all of the ambroxin will dissolve in your alcohol. So, best to use 10%. Next up, Spirambrene. I got some of this from the wonderful Harrison Joseph. I cannot find it otherwise. And I haven't done a ton of testing with this yet, but I'm so thankful he allowed me to purchase some of the small quantity that he actually has, because Spirambrene is in a lot of formulas that I find. Patent formulas, GCMS analyses. It's in a lot, but I can't find it anywhere. Cannot find it. Last up, Timberol. Timberol is in the family of Karmawood and Norlimbinol, but it smells different. Karmawood and Norlimbinol are very close to each other. They're like that super amber, dry, woody, ambery. Timberol is it's a touch more leathery, a little less ambery to my nose, and a little more delicate. It's not as, I shouldn't say offensive. It's not as aggressive in the nose as Norlimbinol and Karmawood. Okay, we've got our ambers, we've got our Hedione HC, and look at that. We are more than halfway full. Okay, we're doing so well. Let's dip. And we will write. This is our Hedione and amber. Number 4. Okay, next, because we started with the sweet notes, the musks, rather than moving to the floral the floral core, the floral aspect of the formula, in other words, the ionones, I want to start adding in some of the smaller materials because remember the ionones here is 24% of the juice. Ionones are pretty strong. I would imagine, and I'm just guessing here, I would imagine that those ionones are going to dominate. They are going to stand their ground in the formula. And I want to smell what this formula is like sans ionones. So we're going to start with the spicy notes. Then we're going to get into the more light florals. There's plenty of rosy material. There's like a nice rosy accord in here. There's real rose Otto. But we're going to save the ionones. Right now, let's move to the spicy notes. Now, interestingly, there's cassia in here. Cassia is Chinese cinnamon, I believe. It's very cinnamony, very cinnamon-like. I'm surprised to see it in here. I'm wondering what is in cassia to where the interpreter of this GCMS report was like, oh yeah, that's cassia, instead of saying, oh, that's cinnamon. I don't know. What I like about cassia, however, is it reminds me of cinnamon raisin bread. That's what I smell, cinnamon raisin bread. And maybe it's just because of the mental associations, but I even get a little bit of sweetness when I smell this. And all we need is one drop. Yeah, one drop. It's very cinnamony, but that nice, I don't know, leavened, yeasty bread smell. I also get that in here, which is oddly enjoyable. Next up, Anise Seed. If you don't have anise, just use star anise. It's pretty close. It's close enough for perfumery, or at least for beginning perfumery. This anise is got a little bit of a licorice vibe to it. Come on. I say a little bit because when what I was expecting to smell in here was just a little bit different. I know that anise and star anise has a licorice-like vibe to it. This one just threw me off guard. That just goes to show I have more reps to do with knowing my materials and, you know. Eugenol. Love this. The smell of clove. Very warm. Really helps warm things up in your formula. Gives a little bit of heat in your nose. Eugenol does. Now, last up, interestingly, ginger. The formula called for ginger, which is frustrating because there's a difference between ginger CO2, and fresh ginger. They smell different. I have a hard time with ginger. With normal ginger, it's rooty, it's dark, it's smoky, it's a little earthy, it just smells a little off. Fresh ginger smells amazing. It smells like fresh ginger. Now, I was uncertain of which ginger to use, so I figured I would split the difference ginger CO2. Ginger CO2, for me, roughly splits the difference. You get that earthy, rooty ginger vibe, but you get that aspect of the fresh ginger. You get it both, so we're going to do that. And not to mention the color is awesome. And if you know me, not only do I like the smell of this stuff, but when we get a really nice color, I just get excited. Okay. Good job, ginger. Find your new home in the blend. Okay. Good. We're going to give this a shake. Give it another dip. Okay. Alrighty, pen, where are you? Spices, number 5. Wonderful. Okay. Let's add in, this is a tough one because we have some jasmine-like notes. We have cis-Jasmone, we have benzyl acetate, we have a little bit, let me see how much benzyl salicylate. Oh, yeah, we have a little bit of benzyl salicylate. I mean, there's traces of benzyl salicylate. Then we have the fruitier notes, the fruity sweet notes like benzaldehyde. I'm going to put our Heliotropin in there. Let's do this. Let's do some of these sweet, floral, fruity notes, and then we'll go from there. So let us start. Benzoate there. Let's start with our. Where are you at? Benzaldehyde. Oh, there's just a breath of benzaldehyde. Not much. Not much. Okay. We have our breath of benzaldehyde. Next up, ethyl caproate. Yep. Just a little bit of ethyl caproate. Ethyl caproate, ooh. It's like a strawberry, pineapple, and banana. It's like a mix of pineapple, strawberry, and banana. But I don't even need a full drop in here. Oh Lord. And this is a 1% dilution. So not only is this stuff strong, but I don't even need much in here. Which is too bad. Stuff smells really good. Next up, ethyl octanoate or ethyl caprolate. Now there's more of this. I did not have ethyl heptanoate. It's one molecule I don't have. Now the structure is very similar to ethyl octanoate, so I just increased the amount of ethyl octanoate. Ethyl octanoate is also fruity. Oops, overdid that just a touch. It is also fruity. It has that pineapple aspect. Okay, 2 more. We're going to do ethyl acetate. This is a bit more sweet. I mean, like more vanillic sweet than fruity sweet, but it still has the same vibe. This is a 1% dilution. There's probably only going to be a drop or a drop and a half. Let's see. Yeah, a drop will do it. Good job, ethyl acetate. And finally, our Heliotropin. Now, of all the fruity-like notes, the most is Heliotropin. Almost 3% of the concentrate is in Heliotropin. All right. Let's give this a mix. We'll give it a dip, and what should we call this? Let's call this the fruity aspect. We'll just call this fruits. Number 6. Okay, so let's move in the floral direction, and we are going to have 4 more groups. We're going to start with the rosy materials, then we're going to add the jasmine materials, then we're going to add the heavy hitting ionones, and then we'll do some of the top notes, including the pyrrolone. First up, let's get these florals. All right, first up, benzyl alcohol. Benzyl alcohol has a light floral smell. go. It's rich though. I don't use as much benzyl alcohol as I thought I would. It's a bit, it is a bit phenolic. So if you use it as a solvent for, say, maltol, it can dominate the maltol. Next up, dimethyl benzyl carbonyl butyrate, or DMBCB. This is nice. It's a touch floral, but it's more fruity. Come on. These cone liners for these caps are great to help prevent evaporation, but often they fall off the cap. Yeah, this is wonderful. It's very fruity. Very fruity. Like a plum fruity. Okay. Did I get? Yeah, I got enough. I got enough. All right. Next up, ethyl phenyl acetate. Ethyl phenyl acetate, oddly, is different than phenyl ethyl acetate. It's strong. Ooh, boy. It's sweet honey. I'm getting honey right, just kicking me in the nose. It's very, very rich. There's not much in here. Actually, I only need very little. Okay. That'll help beef up our rosy floral accord. Next up, ethyl phenyl propionate, or propionate, otherwise known as labdamate. Just a breath of labdamate. I have not tested this or evaluated this. Don't know what it smells like. Let's see the notes. Hyacinth rose honey, fruity rummy. Labdamate is ethereal and sweet, bringing to mind rum, fruit, wines, and honey. Okay, so we're keeping along with our thick, rosy honey theme, but I don't need much. Come on. Don't need much. Okay. Next up, phenyl ethyl alcohol. If you don't have phenyl ethyl alcohol and you're starting perfumery, I think you're doing it wrong. I'm only half kidding. There's not really a wrong way to do it, as long as you're doing it and you're trying to progress. There's no wrong way. But phenyl ethyl alcohol is a key part of many floral accords, mostly rose. So, get you some of that. Next up, phenyl ethyl acetate. So here's the opposite. Oh, hold on. Phenyl ethyl phenyl acetate. I have the wrong one. Hold on. Okay, I have phenyl ethyl phenyl acetate. That was a close one. I almost put the wrong ingredient in. Luckily, they smell similar. So no biggie if I got it wrong. Plus, there's only 0.07% of the concentrate, or barely 1/100th of a gram in this formula. Here we go. Okay. We've got 3 more. Still rosy stuff. Actual rose Otto from Bulgaria. Oh. The interesting part about real rose, it smells different than the rose reconstitutions you get. Not only is it very strong in honey, but there's this acidic, like vinegar, like sharpness to it. Okay. Don't need much. That's going to be give a wonderful bloom to this, I hope. Now we've got 2 more ingredients. These are green ingredients. The first is acetyl, or acetaldehyde diethyl acetyl. It's a 1% dilution. This is strong. It's very ethereal. That's the word that I'm getting. I wouldn't know what you'd meant if someone said, oh, it smells ethereal. But when you smell enough of these and ethereal is used as the descriptor and you notice that that's the through line, all of a sudden you start to understand what ethereal means. It's also very nutty, which is interesting. There's like a pistachio, very interesting, but there's a nuttiness to this. And this is only at 1% and it's kicking my nose. So let's add it in. Ooh, I added a drop. Whoops. So we're going to perfect. Wonderful. And last up, a new molecule I just got from Pell Wall. Isobutyl methyl ketone. This stuff is also strong. Fruity, spicy. I should take this down to 1%. It's also green, but smelling this at 10%, I can smell that my nostrils are being overpowered, that my olfactive bulb or whatever that nose thing is called, it's oversaturated, and I need to dilute it further to get a good sense of what this actually smells like. A lot of the isobutyrates, a lot of those materials do that to my nose, where I got to take it down to 1% for me to be able to really appreciate what it smells like. All right. We are not far from being done, my friends. We're going to dip. All right. And we are going to call this Rose. Rose. That's number 7. Okay. We have only a few more groups. Let's do our jasmine-like materials. And there's not much. There's not much at all. Got benzyl acetate, a little bit of cis-Jasmone, and then we're going to do our benzyl salicylate. Not that benzyl salicylate is like jasmine, but it's floral. It's a good blender. So, ooh. Benzyl acetate, you are strong today. Okay. Cis-Jasmone. Interesting material. It's floral, it's fresh. It's got a brightness to it. It's got this lift to it, and I swear I get a celery note. One user made a comment in a previous video about his cis-Jasmone and asked about a rancid smell. Rancid is not a part of cis-Jasmone. So if you're getting that butyric acid, it's probably bad. It might be bad. Last up, we're going to do our benzyl salicylate. This is only at 1%. There's not much in here. 0.06% of the concentrate is benzyl salicylate. Okay. Love salicylates. I love what they do to fragrances, how they smooth it out. It's like they take all of the ingredients and they just smear them together. That's what I feel like salicylates do. And it gives it a character of its own. Benzyl salicylate is very smooth and warm and balsamic versus something like ethyl salicylate or methyl salicylate. It's one of those, which is very minty. Still has the salicylate aspect, but it's very minty. Okay. Here we go. Come on. When I dip, you dip, we dip. All right, so we have, let's do our, we'll just say jasmine. That's number 8. Friends, let's do this. You know what we're going to do? We're going to save the Ionones for last. It's going to be the biggest heavy hitters. It's going to be obvious what is going on there. So let's add some of these top notes and we'll go from there. The first is going to be Methyl Benzoate. There's not much in here, which makes me think this should have been a part of a different accord in the lineup, but I don't have a lot of experience with methyl benzoate. So It's a top note. It does not last very long. I'm going to add it with the top notes. I'm going to add it with the bergamot, which is next. Bergamot. I just dumped 250 milliliters of bergamot. It was not good. A reminder that you get what you pay for. I also dumped 120 milliliters of neroli for the same reason. I bought it at a great price from a reputable supplier. No qualms with the supplier. I thought I was getting a pretty sweet deal. But turns out either the batch was questionable, of questionable quality. It's not like it was terrible. It's not like it was terrible. But it's not what I'm used to smelling. When I smell something that's good, that was not it. And I'm not about to put that in any blends because what am I going to do with it? You know? So dumped it. It's right over there. It's in that bottle. And I've got a log out in my front yard. And occasionally I go out there and I spread the juice on that log, and I've got a really good smelling beacon in my front yard. Next up, pyrrolone. Or isobutylquinoline. Okay, good there. Friends, I'm excited. I can't smell anything off the strips yet. Sometimes I can, but I can't. Today I can't. So when we go through our smell tests, it's gonna be an adventure. Okay. So what we're going to put here is just top notes and pyrrolone. It won't be too difficult to remember. It's number 9. And then last but not least, all ionones belong to this batch. We're going to start with dihydroionone beta. I'm not exactly sure the difference between this and beta ionone. Sure, the dihydro means something, but as far as smelling it is concerned, it's pretty darn close. Pretty darn close. That typical ionone, woody, violet orris, a little dry, very clear. Next up, N-methyl ionone, or Iralia. Can use Iralia, Iralia Total. If you have isoraldine, use isoraldine, 70 or 95. I think a lot of this is going to get covered up by the methyl ionone gamma, so it's whatever you got. Okay. One more ingredient. We're all done. Methyl ionone gamma. There's going to be a few pipettes of this. We've got 3 whole grams at 10% dilution. 23% of the concentrate is in methyl ionone gamma. Okay. We're almost there. All right. Methyl ionone gamma should be on your list of beginning materials to get. Forget methyl ionone alpha, methyl ionone beta. Just do methyl ionone gamma. All right. For good measure. And let's dip. Okay. And let's write final on this one. Close. And let's evaluate. Okay. First off, we had our vanilla, our coumarin, bicyclononolactone, ethyl vanillin, and our ISOE super. Most of this was ISOE super. And this is the first time ever I've been able to smell the ISOE super in a blend. There is so much ISOE super in here. I'm getting that dry, woody, ambery contrast alongside that gourmand, edible vanillin. And the coumarin is so delicate. So delicate, but it adds just a little bit. Next up, we added the benzoin. We added the Veramos Patchouli, the Herculean D. Nice. This just darkens it. It gives it a bit more woodiness, a bit more of an herbal facet. But it's still warm, it's still sweet, it's very nice. Next up, we add all those musks. And it's almost as if the musks are like pulling it down. It's not really throwing off the strip as much with the musks on here. You can tell that there's musks. You get that white musk vibe. Next up, the Hedione and the ambers. Let's see what happens. Hedione is noticeable. The Hedione HC, little bit that there was, is very noticeable. And dare I say, it's complementing the ambroxan very well. I can't quite pick out the Spirambrene because I have not tested Spirambrene enough to be able to pick it out, but the ambroxan, that Hedione, is pairing very well with the ISOE super. Next up, the spices, the cassia, the ginger, the eugenol, and the anise. And this is noticeable. Okay, the eugenol really warms it up in that eugenol way, but I'm getting that licoricey type note from the anise. And I'm actually picking up the ginger. The ginger CO2. It's adding a very nice golden edge to the spices. And here at this point, I can tell we're going down Enigma. Being familiar with Enigma, I'm like, okay, now we're getting close. Some stuff is missing, but these spices, the spices are key in the Enigma. Next up, we have the more fruity stuff. We have all the ethyls. Ethyl acetate. We've got our Heliotropin. Phenyl acetate. Ethyl caproate. Ethyl octanoate. We also have the benzaldehyde. So maybe a little bit of cherry thrown in with all this. Cherry and almond. We're getting further down the Enigma road. This adds a fruity aspect to it in a very interesting way that complements with the spices. That is fascinating. So I'm going to take note here. When you've got some spices, it doesn't hurt to throw in some pineapple, apple, benzaldehyde, Heliotropin. Those can complement each other very well. Oh, that's nice. That is nice. Okay, next up, rose. All the rosy materials. And the rose dominates. That's strong. But I can still smell how it's building on top of everything below it, and this is just beauty on the way up so far. Next up, the jasmine notes. Benzyl acetate, cis-Jasmone, Benzyl Salicylate. Very delicate, but very cool. Very cool. The benzyl acetate does something really interesting. The cis-Jasmone. It gives it a little bit of lift, a little bit of that white floral without making it narcotic, but it just makes it a little bit more open. Makes the florals a little bit more open. That's interesting. Next up, we have the top notes. Well, the methyl benzoate, the bergamot, and the pyrrolone. So are we going to smell the bergamot and leather in here? Let's see. Barely. Barely. This smells amazing. It smells freaking amazing. Absolutely amazing. I am getting a little bit of the bergamot. that's coming through. The pyrrolone, oddly enough, I'm not getting it. I would have to do an A/B test, I think. But I was expecting to get a little bit more dry leather. Last up, we added all the Ionones. I hope I don't get kicked in the face with Ionones, but let's see what 25% Ionones does. This is beautiful. This is fantastic. Yeah, there are Ionones there. And I'm getting that classic rose, jasmine, floral accord that I've smelled so many times. But it's built, this is just beautiful. Holy cow. I'm gonna stop commenting. I'm gonna stop commenting. You need to start blending if you haven't been doing this already. This is awesome. It is very close. I would say it's pretty darn close to the Enigma I remember in my mind. I remember in my mind it being a bit darker, a bit more cola-like. But this is 30 minutes old, 5 minutes old, whatever it is. But this is awesome. Absolutely awesome. Thank you for joining me. Whip it up. And per usual, if and when you swap out anything in the formula, just make a comment for like what you swapped, how it turned out, and I'll see you next time.